ambition, right? As a good baseline, right? So, so the inside sales team, when I first joined, had no official gamification tools whatsoever. Basically, they're traditional sales contests, right? So, managers like myself would just find something creative, like, okay, we're going to have a contest around calls, right? But as we started to enhance our tech stack, which started with a dialer, right? We were looking for ways to leverage the fact that, we had some better tracking around some of our metrics, like, were we connecting with the right people, number of calls, all that kind of stuff, mostly activity based, right? Versus say volume based or what we call like an outcome based, right? It's more in key process input variables, right? KPIs. And so when we used to have inside sales.com, a different one, a competitor, I would say, when it comes to gamification, and we worked with them to do like a couple of contests. I mean, they were more larger on scale, so like whole inside sales organization, not sub teams or anything like that. Longer in scale, hey, we're going to run this all summer, right? So like the quarter versus month or week. And we saw some really, really great results from the concept of gamification, right? So the fact of people being able to view how they're doing against each other on an objective. So in this case was allocating for different type of sales activities, different amount of points. I think the challenge that we ran into when we first started doing it with this other platform was that so one, the only metrics that we could use were metrics that were tied to the dialer, right? So they weren't metrics tied to what was in Salesforce. They were metrics tied that were in the dialer, right? So they were all call-centric metrics. And in the case of the contest we wanted to do, we were actually wanting to kind of go outside the dialer, right? Some other metrics that were in Salesforce that we could pull, but they weren't in the dialer. So we had to manually, calculate. So even though people saw a scorecard, that scorecard did not actually represent where they would fall or where their teams would fall in the rankings. There was actually a manual analysis that was done, a manual report that was sent at the end of the week, right? That said, okay, I know you were just seeing on the dialer, on the scoreboard, but here's really where we are because we had to do some manual work because we had to incorporate data that was outside of the dialer. So, but what it did help us though is get our heads around gamification, right? And leveraging technology and leveraging data. And that really, just the results were really good. Even if it was clunky, it was more manual in our case, right? The results were really good. We saw a sharp increase in the type of activities we were tracking. Come ambition. So ambition comes on board. And although, I always joke around, but I say, we're like a dinosaur. We start out slow. And one of these days we'll get to a point where we're using all the aspects of the platform, but we really got the platform for gamification. And since we had some, a baseline of what that was, quickly we really saw that. I think a huge benefit that Ambition has is that it is integrated in with Salesforce. So basically, any Salesforce element that an individual, that gets tied to an individual versus an account, right? That I can pull in, it's a data point that I can use, right? So that really helped us. Once we started getting used to how Ambition's contests and scoreboards worked, right? Which the first contest we did like I think it was like a 30-day contest. Yeah, it was March. Yeah, I think it was like we called it March Madness. Yeah, and we got feedback for that. It's like it's because it was like people related it to like a marathon, right?
Yep.
Because like they had to keep running, keep that volume up.
I've got a client right now, Jorge, that's doing a 12-month-long fantasy competition. And it was one of those things where I was like, hey, this is not a best practice. Like there's a lot of research that shows that reps lose interest over time. And
they do.
But they
Yeah.
ran with it.
Yeah.
They've done well. I think they've got their stable of like stallions though that have distanced themselves so far from everybody else over the course of the 9 months, 10 months so far that does.
Yeah.
So you guys are right aligned with I think you guys have a good mix of a couple of weeks here, a couple of weeks there. I think is a good tactic.
It's so true though, the analogy to that marathon though. It's just like you just said, right? Like you get these leaders, or you're watching like cycling, right?
Yeah.
These, you see these leaders and there's like these packs, right? And that's exactly what happens. And the ones in the back kind of give up. It's like, hey, I'm just gonna make it to the 30 days or the 90 days or the 1 year. But that was our first contest, and that really helped us understand the dashboards, the metrics, also give us confidence that the integration between Ambition and Salesforce was working.
Yep.
So, the data was matching. So I think that was a really good, and again, remember, it was the whole team, right? So it was all the ISRs across all the teams. And there was, we saw, I think on that one, it was crazy. We saw like a 700% increase in sales activity. I remember because I used that for one of my performance reviews. I was like, and the timing of it was beautiful because for us, we had just introduced new pricing for our mortgage insurance core product out there in the market, and we had so the month right as we introduced the pricing, that first month was when we ran the contest. So we launched like the new pricing in the beginning of March, and it was a March contest, right? And what resulted is, I mean, the correlation, there's a lot of reasons what the correlations, hey, do we have the lowest price out there in the market or competitive pricing? Was the time right? Timing was right. There's a lot of reasons why, but I will tell you, we were number one market share that quarter. And we had never been number one market share since 2005. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say it's not the contest, right? It's a lot of other factors because there's a whole sales team out there. But the fact that you had close to 20 ISRs, multiplying the number of customer touch points around a particular topic, a hot one, hey, we got really good pricing for a whole month at 7x. Like if we did have the tool, right? At 7x, you have to say that, hey, we did well in getting the word out, and we probably drove our, the number of folks quoting us and then seeing our price and then rewarding us with that business. So that for me was a big aha. Timing was perfect. The contest went smooth. We got feedback that was a little bit like a marathon. And then, we transitioned to then doing more smaller individual teams. But in here, so I'll stay with that first phase. It validated a bunch of things for me. It validated the integration. It validated the concept, the ease of use. It was not difficult to set up. We had some iterations with it, but at the end, like it was me, and I'm not a tech guy, and our ATD, or our junior program person, and we were able to do it. You know what I mean? And with you guys, and the other thing I also, I always will value is you and the support team. I mean, like we never feel that we are a 20-seat company. We just never do. You know what I mean? You guys always make us feel like we're like 100 or 200, 500-seat company, right? And I can't tell you, compared to other vendors we have worked with, that's not the norm, but I think it's a huge asset that you guys provide, because I've never felt not special, which is great. And that's a tribute to you, the sales rep, the account manager, your leadership. You know what I mean? I mean, heck, your leader was willing to come down to Raleigh for one of our AISP conferences and be a speaker. He didn't have to do that, but you did. You know what I mean? And when I went to the AISP conference and I went to your booth, you guys literally made me feel like royalty between everybody that was there, just answering questions and talking. I mean, it was great. So that contest really helped me frame up like, this works, right? And but then I think the more exciting piece, like, let's fast forward to today, right? And where we are today, I can't. I mean, again, I think compared to your other customers, they're probably doing light years ahead of us. But knowing us that we're more of a traditional, and by that I mean slower, bigger, more bureaucratic. I'm really pleased where we are, because we're at a point now that the leaders are using Ambition to drive behaviors like routinely, right? So, hey, I finished, a great example is, Van, one of my team leads, she had a very successful contest around creating contacts, right? And you saw the results. We spiked in the number of contacts. But then the very next, when she's done with it, and by the way, as she's doing these contests, she's tying some professional development in, right? Now, what is she doing? She just launched this Monday. She launched a social media one, right? And prior to that, she had one on our value prop, specific, giving points for specific value prop, and she tied in education. So the social one she just did, she tied in a 1-hour session with her team on how to use LinkedIn to prospect. So she does an educational piece and then launches a contest. So what that tells me is they now see the tool in their toolkit and they're not afraid to use it. Two, the teams are not saying, hey, we've had enough of these contests. If anything, it's like, bring them on because they love the little reward and recognition. We're seeing more and more engagement. So as the contests are going, the bottom score person is not very low anymore, right? Like everyone's got decent scores. Like I remember my first contest, you had 5 or 6 that were killing it, and there was a middle of the pack, and then there was guys that just like checked out, right? Well, now that we see nobody's checking out anymore, everyone's engaged, right? And that's probably the design of the contest and the frequency and the comfort of use, right? And the reward. I mean, it's like it's all working. So now we've moved to a place where our leaders are all they're being creative. I mean, and what I love is they leverage each other's best practices. So Brian actually created the contact one, and that goes back to how we have really improved on what we do. Because had we been using the other platform, we'd always have been limited to the dialer. But now that we have the connections with Salesforce data fields, right? I can not only do things around activity metrics that are dialer related, right? But I can also now pull in things like contacts, right? And we're even now dabbling with the idea of doing a contest around cadence creation and email template creation, snippet creations, which are tied to our SalesLoft and our cadence tool, right? Because those fields are being logged at the individual level in Salesforce. Someone creates a cadence, it's tied to a person, so the fields are there. So it's just a matter of finding them in Ambition, right? The right, and then bring them in, and then figuring out how we're going to reward. So the point is that teams are being creative, leaders are being creative, teams are being receptive, the engagement level's up, and it's driving behavior that we want. And there's a lot of best practice sharing. So I am super pleased with the gamification aspect of it. I am where I want us to be, where every week they're coming to me saying, hey, I want to do X, right? So that's great. But the next level is even more exciting, and that is which we've been talking for a long time, and that is really leveraging the performance tracking, on it, right? And I mean, it's on me, but it's going to be a reality where we will be able to give our teams a view into how well they're doing on those KPIs, right? I think the big challenge with our business, and it's not so in many businesses, is that our sales, we are less sales process oriented. You know what I mean? So like, I don't want to say we wing it, but every salesperson, they have the routines, but they're not following a process, so to speak. There is a process, but it's more spoken than documented, right? And so when we're trying to put tools that are really built around processes, it's tricky for us, right? But we're going to overcome it because the cadence tools that we've had with SalesLoft have really helped us become more process oriented, right? Because it is all building sequences or cadence steps. That's one piece of it. But two, more importantly, is I'm noticing that the reps need something. They're asking for something to help them say, am I on track to make my KPIs? Because what's happening is they're relying on weekly reports, right? And if they open those weekly reports, and what could happen is you get to an end of a quarter and you're not meeting your objectives, right? And especially when they're right now, all how they're getting paid is really activity based because of kind of the environment. We'll eventually get back to getting paid based on how we're doing against an operating plan, but until then, it's very activity based. So they rely on these weekly reports, and it's not good enough because what could happen is by the end of the week, they didn't get the number of call activities they needed, or the number of emails out, right, or built, or the number of contacts that they were supposed to profile. And I think they're actually asking, like, is there something I can use every day that I can go in, and that's what Ambition will tell them, right? So they have a call metric, an email metric, a social metric, right? Hey, social touches, you're logging social touches, and contact creation metric, which are all fields we can pull for Salesforce. If they have those 4, and I have goals 10, 5, 10, 20, 5, 2 per day, and they're not being paid on that, but it's just telling them, it's like a guideline, and it's red, yellow, green, right? They can then have something real time, right? And then my leaders have something to help them when they're coaching them, when they're doing their weekly one-on-ones, right? Hey, I see you're red on calls, and that's like a week long. Like you're not going to make your, if you keep that trend, and you're not going to make your quarterly number, that's going to be dollars out of your pocket. What do we need to do? What can I do to help, right? So that's the next step. And then the final one, this is 2021, because I'm gonna launch this quarter if it's the last thing I do. But 2021 is going to be, now using the coaching tools, right? So now if you've got the metrics, you got gamification, then I can now incorporate those into one-on-one coaching tools that you guys have, which we haven't even opened that package.
Yeah.